Hello and welcome to Hank Games Without Hank. It's time for the FA Cup replay. If you didn't see the last game, you need to go watch it now. No spoilers, but OMFG. Go watch that game before you watch this one. We're taking on Newcastle again. We took them on just a few days ago, and it was a 2-2 draw, but what a 2-2 draw. Today we're coming back with a lot of the same players. We're a little bit tired, but we know that we can win this game because we showed our insane ability to score tons of goals in a very short period of time if we focus. I'm going to talk about Crash Course again, this time hopefully actually talking about Crash Course. We are starting today in goal, Mark Anderson, inventor of the Netscape web browser and Swindon Town goalkeeper. Fat Lucas not pleased with his performance in the last game. The truth is that, Fat Lucas is a great surprise pick for goalkeeper, but when teams have time to prepare for him right now, they can kind of figure out the way to make it very difficult for him, and we don't want that. So he's going to be, for the rest of the season, he's going to be a guy that we bring on occasionally, but he is, look, he's 43, 44, I can't even remember how old he is. He is old for a professional soccer player, and he knows it, and we know it. And also, he likes being the goalkeeping coach. Like that's what he's been doing for a living the last several seasons. So yeah, so that's where we are. But about Crash Course, so I always loved making educational content on the Vlogbrothers channel, but it was never that popular. Like it didn't get nearly as many views as our other kinds of videos, and it took way more work. Oh no! And so that was part of the problem. But most of the problem was that we just didn't have the bandwidth as individuals to make this stuff. Like we didn't know how to make it well. Like we don't, we aren't educators. Like neither my brother nor myself really knows. It's gotta be, and it is. It starts out beautifully. He's big. He's red. He's found the perfect bed. D. McGoldrylocks. D. McGoldrylocks. He's big. He's red. He's found the perfect bed. D. McGoldrylocks. D. McGoldrylocks. Yes. Oh, look at that. He's got such a beautiful head. It's just so strong and powerful. And he's a finisher. So I'm really proud of the development of D. McGoldrylocks. He's become, frankly, in my opinion, one of the best players on the Swindon Town Swoodly Poopers. And when we leave the Swindon Town Swoodly Poopers, when we leave FIFA 11 at the end of this season and we move on to whatever the future may hold, I feel like D. McGoldrylocks is one of the guys who, at the core of the team, I feel like moving forward, that they're going to be okay because they've got D. McGoldrylocks there. So anyway, I always really loved making educational content, and I really believe in the power of YouTube to make educational content. Like it can make, because it's so you can make stuff a lot cheaper than traditional educational video, which means that it's possible to make stuff that's really helpful to students and to make it for free, whether that's the Khan Academy doing it or Udacity or Crash Course. There's lots of different ways to approach this problem, or approach the problem of like how do you introduce nuance to these subjects quickly and also in a way that is really genuinely useful and like leads to people actually learning stuff instead of just like staring at a screen and being entertained for 10 minutes. But to do that, we needed teachers, because I'm not a teacher. And we've been really lucky with Crash Course to have great teachers helping us make it, because those are the people who actually know, what stuff do students need to know and how do they best learn it. Like how, in their experience and decades of being in a classroom, like how do students actually learn? And that's what's so that's the most fun part of Crash Course for me, is trying to make stuff that will actually result in learning. Like a lot of it's silly and like, oh, I do the cinnamon challenge or whatever, or make fun of myself, my high school self. But there is the goal there is always to really be an educator, not a formal educator, not a teacher, and not in any way certainly to replace teaching, which I continue to think is basically irreplaceable. Like I think the experience of like classroom teaching, or at least that sort of like personal attention teaching, is basically non-replaceable. I think you can learn a lot from from YouTube videos, but I don't think you can ever quite get an education. So much of what happens, or at least in my educational experience, happens in educational conversations. So, and we can never do that. Like, we can answer comments, but we can never quite be that same kind of voice that you have. Oh! With a teacher. Was that going to be Silent but Deadly Merrick Merrick? No, it's going to be S. Holden Goldfield. Oh, he had the great idea, but it just got caught up with that other player there. So that's that's the thing that I'm most proud of with Crash Course. But basically, while there is a lot of like silliness and jokiness, and it's certainly a lot lighter than traditional educational video, the argument that we're trying to make with Crash Course is that people actually learn better when you treat when you kind of assume that the subject matter is interesting, instead of assuming that the subject matter is like dumb and boring and needs to just be presented in a dumb and boring way, because that's the truth of it. Like, the truth, the reality is that there is a thrill to learning and to being learned, for lack of a better word. Like, there's an enjoyment to that, that you just don't get a lot of times in school, because it's so formalized and rigid, and because there are these very specific goals that you have to try to accomplish. And I remember moving from high school to college and just feeling like the world had been opened up for me. Actually, I guess really it happened when I moved from when I went to boarding school in 10th grade. I felt like the world of learning had been opened up to me, because suddenly there were all kinds of different ways to learn, and it wasn't a matter of like this. It wasn't just about getting, accomplishing something on a standardized test. It was really like, do you know this stuff? Is it enriching your life? Is it making your world a more interesting place to live? And when you think of learning that way, when you think of learning not as something that like you have to do to get to college, or a hurdle that you have to jump over, but instead as a way of being, like a way of orienting yourself to the universe, so that you can sort of be a more like informed and engaged participant in the universe, that's when it gets cool, because that's when it starts to feel like, oh, this is actually valuable. Like, I would rather do this than watch NCIS, because like the purpose of NCIS is to give me a break. The reason NCIS exists is to like let my brain relax, and that's not without value. It's definitely important. But to me, the question is like, what are you going to do when your brain isn't relaxing? What are you going to do when you're like in learn mode? Are you going to learn, or are you also going to watch NCIS then? Because, you need time for both. You need time when your brain is in learn mode, and you need time when your brain is in relax mode. But the question for me is, like, how and what are you going to learn when your brain is in learn mode? And is it going to make your world a more interesting place to live? I always think about the fact that I almost never regret reading a book. Like, I almost never look back at an evening I spent reading and think, man, I wish I'd watched TV. And even when it's really good television, I almost never look back at an evening of television and think like, oh, that was really productive. I really feel like I'm, closer to being the person I want to be, or having the life I want to have, or whatever. And so that's kind of a defining thing for me. That was a bit of a foul. Yeah. No, I agree. It was a foul. I came in a little late. I apologized. S. Holden Goldfield is sorry. So for me, that's what we want to do with Crash Course. Is we want to bring that sense of engagement and fun and participatory learning as best we can to YouTube, with the awareness that it will never be what classrooms are, and I don't want it to be. Like, I think it's amazing to me that Crash Course is taught in so many classrooms. I mean, it's taught in hundreds and hundreds of schools, and that it can be a part of the classroom conversation is really, really awesome. But I don't want it to be to replace in any way a curriculum. So in that way, I'm not a teacher. I'm an introduction to teachers. I'm hopefully a way in for teachers to talk about the stuff that they need to talk about in order to, to accomplish those learning goals, so that you do become a more like informed and productive member of the social order. Which is that, like, that's kind of the point. ultimately the point is for you to both generate more income than you otherwise would have generated so that my life will be better in retirement, and also to make a world in which you make really good decisions, because only when you make those good decisions can I count on you to make the world better for me and also for my descendants. So that's the purpose of education to me. And hopefully Crash Course is doing that. But it is really fun. Obviously it's something I like doing, or I would just write books, because writing books is, much more of a job in terms of making money and stuff than making YouTube videos is. But I really love it. I really love the audience. Like, I'm really proud of Crash Course's audience. Like, I feel like they're super thoughtful, and they hold us to an extremely high standard, which I really appreciate. And yeah, so I love it, and I hope we get to do it for a long time. That said, it is hard to balance, because it does take over your life. Like, working on those scripts with Mr. Meyer. I still call him Mr. Meyer, because he's still my teacher. Even though, like, we're both adults, and he's only like 6 years older than I am. When Mr. Meyer was my high school history teacher, he's the guy who writes the Crash Course episodes and who helps us sort of, like, overall, like, draft the mission of the show. He was like 22 when he was my high school history teacher, and now we're like coworkers. But he's still Mr. Meyer. Oh, look, our opponents are smelling their pits in shame, because the Swindon Town Swoodly Poopers came back from a seemingly insurmountable deficit to win the game and to move forward in the FA Cup. Wow, Merrick's hand just went inside of Fahey. That's terrifying. I hope that everybody's okay there. All right, thanks for watching. Best wishes.